So yeah, I'm Glen Ocsko. I'm head of local government at Made Tech, a company that has been around for a little while, but actually only recently started breaking into local government side of things, which is kind of where I come in. So I spent about a decade working inside local government. Hi, Ellen. Looks like you're back and working now. But yeah, I spent about a decade working inside local government.
Sorry, are you talking to me?
I was just saying hello.
Hi.
Excellent. I think everyone's on mute and cameras off and bits and pieces for the moment. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to find a bit more about you and everything and pop it in the chat box or something. But yeah, so I've been around the sector for quite some time, a decade working in it, and then probably 7 or 8 years working pretty much exclusively with the sector as well, from various different guises. In fact, Veronica, I think I may have met you back in my days with Tower Hamlets when I was a youth worker. So I've been around the block a few times and met an awful lot of fantastic people, and hopefully done a few interesting things along the way, which has always been good. And I joined Made Tech back at the end of last year because I looked at what the company was doing, and the way they're doing it is really exciting for me. I'm not going to evangelize about the company because I know there are a lot of amazing people out there doing really good work, but I will be talking about some of the things we do just because it's relevant to the concept of digital evolution. Now, I've got some slides to shove up in the background. I can share these later if anyone is particularly interested. And they're based on a talk I did recently around digital evolution and why it's different to transformation. What the difference is and why I think actually we should be concentrating on evolution rather than focusing on transformation so much. So I'm just going to start going through these and, as we say, just jump in and ask questions as and when needed. So, as I say, from Made Tech, and I've been around for quite some time. This is my evolution from little young fat baby who was far too long for his own good through to where I am today. I've spent a long time working in the voluntary community sector and in local government itself, and works across private sector. So I've kind of gone through and seen things from every angle, and ended up in a place at Made Tech which actually has been evolving itself. Again, I won't say too much about the company because I don't want this to feel salesy, because it's not. But as a company, there has been an awful lot of evolution over the years. Started off working with startups, actually trying to go from first conversation with a startup through to delivered product within 100 days. That was the kind of concept and the idea. And now we realise that makes sense for the public sector as well, because there hasn't been the pace of change that's been needed in the public sector for quite some time. No matter how hard people are working and so on, it's not the fastest moving of all the sectors out there. And a lot of that is down to the fact that it's pretty much tied up in legacy. I remember the days of internet IE6, and I say remember, it actually wasn't all that long ago. And traditionally, public sector, it just hasn't been a sector associated with embracing new tech and new practices. While some local authorities and so on have moved with the times, actually they're still somewhat behind the ultimate curve. There's still pockets of key infrastructure which are running on outdated platforms and outdated techs. I mean, Windows XP was still being used by thousands of NHS machines just 18 months ago. And many platforms were just not upgraded for years, and certainly not at the pace that they should have been, because there were still requirements to work with things like IE6. I mean, the UK public sector is just filled with machines and code that make the Enigma machine look positively futuristic. And this effort we've got across the sector to support the lowest common digital denominator, I mean, it's based on reason. It's no good evolving things to the point that users don't themselves have the tech to make use of them. But it holds things back. And it holds even the most modest development back to the point of stagnation, and ensures that the data, which is the lifeblood of the future, it remains locked away in silo after silo. And Nick, I don't know if you can pop up on screen. I'd be really interested to just have a quick check-in with people and just ask you to answer on a scale of 1 to 10, how restricted by legacy tech would you say your organization is? Just pop your answer on the screen and hit the submit button, and we'll see how people feel about how restricted they are. So if you're really restricted, then you'd be up on the 10s. And actually, if you think, you know what, we've nailed this, we know what we're doing, then you'd answer a number 1. And I'm going to rely on Nick to flash up the results as and when they appear. There we go. Most people seem to be somewhat in the middle. And there's someone's there only down to a 3, which is fantastic. You're one of the lucky ones. Most people, like I said, seem to be roughly, there is some restrictions in there. And a couple have also said actually quite restricted, more than you'd like to be anyway. And that's the same across the sector. I mean, things are changing. Times are changing as well. We've seen the story of evolution change, and certainly in terms of digital across the public sector. I mean, thinking back to the days of UK Online, and that turned into direct gov, or at least it did in some areas, and in other there was a multitude of sites all over the place. I'm long enough in the tooth to remember the alpha.gov.uk, which was an attempt just to say we can do something different, and let's learn the best of private sector in terms of how they help people to search and surface information. Now, of course, we've got gov.uk as well, and the way that can be personalized and actually just operates with minimum viable data, but does so in a phenomenal way. Things like if you've recently renewed your passport or something like that, you'll be able to see how much easier it is these days. And that's because it's constantly changed. And this was something that the GDS approach actually really embodied and brought to the fore, was the idea that we don't just do something once. Actually, we continue to push and push and push and push and push and evolve and develop and change, because tech's changing, need is changing. So why are our platforms staying the same? Because essentially we've got stuck in a process of just making things slightly better. We've digitized paper records, but these are paper records from 19th century institutions that are using 20th century tech to meet 21st century problems. Let's use 21st century tech to do it. So people have done some transformation. People have transformed and started using that more modern tech, but it's not universal, because essentially the transformation side of things has taken control, and people have said, let's transform our tech. Because digital transformation is often bandied about by the sector to describe the way that technical innovation is done, and in terms of leveling up in terms of tech. Digital transformation refers to the adoption of new tech to transform services through replacing non-digital or older platforms with newer digital technology, which sounds good in principle. And it is an important step in the process of enhancing services and offerings. However, it can be misleading. I mean, the phrase itself has been used so widely and so generically that it's begun to lack a clear and widely understood definition, as it achieved buzzword status, and its implied meaning has become so diluted by that of 1,000 different nuances. Now, I'm a child of, not of the 70s, but of the 80s. And I had at least 2 of these transformers. And that's what transformation really is. By virtue of just using the word transformation, we imply that it's an exercise with a clear and finite ending. You transform from one thing into another. You take an organization that wasn't digital, you make it digital. And there's some kind of mysterious transformation involved, but that's it. Once it's done, it's done. Your Optimus Prime has turned from a truck into a robot. Great. Now let's move on. Now, what other thing can we transform? Now, what other thing can we transform entirely separately and just take it up one level? Now, the trouble is that endpoint ends, and all you're doing then is creating a new bit of legacy. You're creating a new endpoint where you're not actually continuing to evolve. And that's where digital evolution actually is different, because it's an entire mindset change. It takes the best bits of transformation and moving from one to another, but removes that endpoint. It's the intentional choice of an organization to rapidly accelerate your organizational rate of digital adoption and change through the simultaneous creation, renovation, and marshalling of digital products, alongside the creation and agile maturation, if that's a word, of platforms infrastructure. I mean, from a practical point of view, it means we research, document, and define an overall digital strategy as one of the first parts of an engagement, but then build a plan that doesn't end, that is using different products and different platforms and different releases and sequential releases over a period of time to deliver against it, as opposed to one monolithic development exercise that is just done. There you go, hand it over. And I guess the idea is not new. It's not something that is restricted to tech. I mean, Darwin himself said it's not strongest of the species that survives. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. And that's what we need to do, is build systems, platforms, processes, and ways of thinking which are constantly changing and evolving. He wasn't the first to come up with it, but he definitely made it the most adaptable. Now, this is kind of anathema to, and I'll put it in kind of air quotes, big IT. Essentially, it's a story we've been steered away from by every single large IT provider out there. It's anti their business model, because they don't want you to evolve. They want you to transform from one of their customers, sorry, from where you were into one of their customers, and then evolve no further. I mean, after all, what's the benefit of you continuing evolution once they have you? There's little chance of a traditional platform provider being able to constantly evolve in a way that suits each and every one of their customers, nor each and every one of their end users. No, they want you to transform once and stay there forever, as it keeps them in positions of power and keeps the money flowing in. So transformation is against their business model. And if it's in their interest, it's very rarely purely aligned with the interest of the sector. But we've had to break out of that. We've wanted to for a long time, and in some respects have done, but the big C word has come along and absolutely turbocharged digital evolution. I mean, we've seen several years worth of development taking place in several months. What was previously unimaginable is now commonplace. I've seen organizations go from having 300 remote workers to 6,000 in a matter of weeks. Can't imagine that happening before. And now we've made that process, we've made that change, we've made that shift. It's about continuing that and not saying, okay, well, this is it. Now we're just going to plateau again. I mean, this opportunity has been paid for in the worst of possible of ways, but COVID has given us the opportunity to boost the evolution of our digital tools and approaches faster and deeper than we ever have in the past. And it is a virus. COVID is a virus, and it follows the same pattern of evolution as viruses have for 1.5 billion years. They've followed that process of natural selection, which has kept them around long after their forebears have disappeared. It relies on, evolution in general relies on changing and growing constantly based on your surroundings, based on what's going on around you and the needs of the world, and not just going down and doing what you did before, because you will go extinct. As the world changes, you need to change. And our world in terms of tech is changing. So we need to roll with those times and absolutely take advantage of the new world that's around us. And we can't do that with tech. Developing tech, it's a similar process. And the process itself is what needs to be trusted and repeated. We need to constantly be going back and challenging ourselves, asking if we're still best meeting the needs of our service users. I mean, are there new tools out there? Just simple tools to explore. Have the expectations of our users changed since we last evaluated things, as internal as well as external? I mean, the evolution of the internet itself has transformed the way the entire world operates. I mean, to think that the solutions that we got used to even a decade ago are still the most relevant and powerful. I mean, it's at best naive, and at worst, it's borderline negligent. And as the world changes, we need to look at what we've done afresh and reimagine it. We need to retain the essence of what was good from the previous versions and see if there's a better way of presenting it that is better fit for the modern world. Now, that isn't to say that evolution always requires change. I'll quickly go on a tiny sidetrack. I do love an analogy. Trees, as we kind of know them today, you know, with a primary trunk and a large height and crown of leaves and stuff, they didn't actually appear on the planet until about 360 million years ago. Whereas the oldest species of sharks appeared on the planet 400 million years ago. So sharks are older than trees. They've been around for a hugely long time, but actually they've not changed too much. They've survived all the global mass extinctions that knocked about 80% of the planet's megafauna out of existence. 95% of all animals were killed in one big extinction event 250 million years ago, but sharks were okay. For them, it worked, and it was regularly challenged, and regularly examined by Mother Nature, but actually no transformation was needed. It just continued to subtly evolve, and that survived the network. So evolution doesn't always mean constant change. What it did do was adapt better to its surroundings as its surroundings changed. And that's what evolution is about. It's about understanding what's around, what's best, and how we can build something that all works together. Because it's in habitats that we need to evolve. We need our digital estates and our digital habitats to feed into each other and nurture each other, rather than maintaining a current status quo where everything's basically kept separate. We shouldn't have to, in digital terms, write complex service integration software to combine all of our platforms and data. It should from the start be designed with interoperability in mind. We shouldn't be accepting anything that is standalone. We should be building things that have a life cycle and contribute to the wider ecosystem in a way which then enables even more impressive and complex mechanisms to be built upon them. Not one single organism should ever dominate that habitat, because otherwise it gets unbalanced and you become too dependent on one thing. Instead, what we need to do is build our tech in a way which enables constant development and constant improvement through evolving these systems and platforms, rather than building them once, putting them down and thinking the job's done. My final dodgy analogy is around, I used to build Airfix kits when I was a kid, and they were fun and they were great while they lasted. But basically, once they were built, then they would just basically be built and they would be on display. And you know what? That's not the point of a toy. You wanted to build them and change them and make them better. So as my skills grew, sadly the kits didn't. Meaning I ended up having to break kits apart, build new bits, sculpt bits, cobble together to achieve the visions I wanted. Now, that relied on changing and growing skills, not current technology. So we now have the ability to allow our technology to change at the same rate and pace as our skills. So our outputs can grow along with our own imagination, rather than just being a variation of what was the original intention. So I've got about a minute left before I want to start hearing more from everyone else here. There are 5 questions that I would like to kind of each person to consider. Now, you don't have to answer these to me right now, but in terms of our platforms, our processes, our applications, everything we do, when we're building them, how can we be the master of our own digital destiny? We've got to ask ourselves, will the product still be optimal in 5 years' time? Is it something we buy now and it's going to continue to evolve, or we build now and continue to evolve? Or is it actually build it now and then hope that in 5 years' time, the situation's still the same? Will it be regularly upgraded? And how do we know that's true? I mean, having been working in the private sector, I've seen so many horror stories of people promised, oh yeah, this is on our roadmap, and it never comes round. How can we make sure that our needs are front and center in terms of what's there? That's true of new versions as well. I mean, some of the biggest social media platforms in the world, they don't have versions. They're just constantly being released on a constant basis and improving themselves to meet user needs as they change. And finally, the last one there is kind of important. Am I limited to a single supplier to evolve it? Because as soon as you start relying on one single organization to actually meet all of your needs, that's when you start hitting challenges. And that's something that makes us a bit different at Made Tech. I won't go into it too much because, like I said, I don't want this to be a sales pitch, but it is all about using tech to improve the lives of everyone in the country, to help solve those problems, to meet outcomes, rather than just saying, here's a bit of functionality, here's a tool, now how can you go off and use it? Actually, what we're trying to do, what's the end point, what's the outcome we're trying to achieve, and what's the impact it's going to have? Those are the things that matter. And they've wonderfully backronymed the MADE name to actually say this is what we believe should be done. We should be looking at, in terms of DigitalOcean, modernizing that legacy tech and the working practices alongside that, using digital in so many ways, not just in terms of the actual tech itself, but all of the tools around digital. So we want to modernize legacy tech and do it faster. We don't want to be spending 2-3 years planning and evolve and digitally transforming something, when actually we can take a very small step, evolve a platform in a small way, prove the concept, evolve it again, iterate, and start realizing that value really quickly, which then builds exponentially. In doing so, we're also able to unlock data, which allows people to then drive decision-making and improve decision-making with every bit of data that's unlocked from previously hidden away and locked away legacy platforms. And we want to enable people to do this themselves. We do loads of stuff around academies where we train up programmers and engineers to be able to do this themselves. We work with apprentices and organizations to basically skill them up so that they can do this. They can own that evolution process. They can own the evolution and development of the tech itself without relying on us or any other vendor. We can then chip in and help and support and advise, but you're in control of your own destiny. And that for us is the end goal, is to give you control of your own evolution. So I'm going to stop talking now, pretty much, and I'm going to ask Nick to split us into a couple of different groups, just 2 groups, pretty random. But what I want to do is ask you to answer this question. In terms of digital evolution, what are you actually doing at the moment? What are what were transformation projects, your digital challenges that you're facing? Are there things that are going well, but what's stopping you from truly evolving them and consistently and repeatedly and on an ongoing basis continue to evolve them over time? And I think we'll have I think it's about 15-20 minutes of discussion on that, and then we'll come back as a group and share some of our thoughts and challenges that we're doing, and see if there is already some advice we can offer within this group as to how some of those challenges might be met, but also then looking at how some of these approaches, the modernizing, the accelerating, the driving, the enable type things, how looking at it through that lens might enable us to operate quicker and actually achieve some real outcomes. So I hope that makes sense. I'll stop sharing my screen so that if anyone if it doesn't make sense, then yeah, pop up and tell me so.
It makes perfect sense to me, but I do not work in a local authority, and I've obviously seen some of this content before. Could everyone unmute and switch your cameras on, please? Do you know what I think? Do you know what, Glenn? I think for the number we've got on here at the moment, 2 groups would be a sledgehammer to crack a wall, very small sledgehammer to crack a walnut. So why don't we open up the discussion in the group we're in here? So, Ellen, are you able to join us? Possibly.
I think Ellen did pop up earlier. Briefly.
Yes. Okay, so let's go to Mr. Arnold first of all. And Glenn's question to you is thus. Glenn.
What are you up to? What are those key challenges you're facing?
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, we've recently launched a new digital strategy, and I'm quite pleased to say actually it is an evolutionary sort of approach. It isn't this is a start and this is where we want to get to. It's more of a process really, or a way of doing things. So it's reviewing what we do, how we could make things better, not just in tech terms, but also in processes. And it's not just as you said at the start of one, this is a start point and an end point. It's actually a continuous an evolutionary process, which hopefully will keep revisiting every 2 or 3 years. As an authority, we've made quite big strides in terms of what we do, the customer facing side. But you touched on it right at the very end there about data, about how we can use data to improve our services and improve our decision making, and that's something really we're at the very start of exploring what we can do with our data. We've got data in different legacy systems, different applications, which they sit siloed within those particular products. So it's how can we utilize that data in those different environments, different areas, bring it together and collect in a single place, single application almost, which we can then use to drive decision making. So I think that's one of the things we're looking towards as well. And also there's the usual stuff as well about AI and automation as well, which we're starting to sort of touch on, just to see how we can use that for back office efficiencies, but also to assist in the customer service tool, whether it's having a that sort of ongoing conversation with a customer when they're submitting on a benefits claim, or they're submitting a bulky waste collection, whatever it might be. But also how we can streamline some of the back office work and automation work, and remove some of that manual intervention, and have a sort of we've always looked at it like an end-to-end integration, but we're looking at like almost a two-way sort of point. So when information comes into us, we also sometimes have to go back to the customer to get some more information. It's just things like that, really. I've probably rambled on a little bit there. Sorry, but
no, you're absolutely right. Data for me, like I say, it's the new oil. It's the most important thing we have at our fingertips. It's the only way we've got any chance of moving from reactive to proactive. And every piece of data we're able to unlock and then feed into other platforms is another opportunity to basically kick up the evolution of our service delivery a notch, or even more than that. It's the only way we're actually going to do more with what we've got, let alone with less. So data for me is absolutely the heart. We're doing a great project at the moment with Hackney Council, where we're building them a data lake. And that data lake is built, and we're unlocking loads of different data sources from legacy tech and from so many other areas, feeding into this data lake, and then building. I don't know why they've gone from lake to warehouse. I've never understood that terminology, but building data warehouses on top of that, so analysts can then dip into that in various different ways and take that data and do good things about it. I'm hoping to link that in with some work that I think Sedgemoor Council are doing, where they've come up with a list of life situations that people might face. And every one of these situations changes your life in some way. And on their own, they're one thing. But actually, if you start combining them, then you start indicating where someone might be moving towards becoming vulnerable. The more of it, so for example, divorce or death of a spouse, or being made homeless or jobless or something like that. On their own, tough. But start combining some of those, and oh my goodness, then actually this person potentially is going to become vulnerable. Let's get in there, let's do some intervention work and some support work, because prevention is, as well as far, far better for the individual, a million times cheaper as well. Now, you can't identify those things unless you've got the data coming in, and not all of that is held by a council. Some of that might be held, you'll know if they've made a claim for benefits from DWP or from Job Seekers Plus or various different places. You'll know if the police have registered a challenge, some criminal activity in a building. You can tie that in together, but you're not going to get that all from the council. So we need these data sources from all over the place feeding into somewhere, and then using tools like AI to be able to say, let's analyze this and let's look at where someone is and act accordingly. So yeah, data is absolutely central to everything.
You're getting to unmute. Tony Kershaw. Yes. No, not no. Yes. What have you? Well, yeah. So do Calderdale transform or evolve? Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Are you a transformer or an evolver? We
are possibly a bit of both, I think. You know, we talk a lot about transformation. It's really just making things a bit better. It's not, you know, it's nothing grand or fantastical that we're doing. We're just constantly trying to make improvements, but you know, even all these years down the road, similar to Daniel, we've still got issues with front office and back office rubbing against each other, and you know, that them trying to drive the process rather than looking at it from, you know, putting the customer central to it. So there's a lot of those battles that still go on. you know, even to this day, which blows my mind when we've all been on these, you know, efficiency improvement journeys for a number of years now. So yeah, we you know, sometimes we just pick our battles and then we end up working with services who we know are going to be a bit more up for it than others. Sometimes we just do it without them really knowing, and before they know it, we've transformed their processes for them because we think we know best, leading from the front. So yeah, we do a bit of transformation, and we do some evolutionary stuff. But we do have issues with legacy systems, and integration's a big problem for us. We don't have any decent middleware. I'm not a tech person, but I'm informed that if we did have that, it would make our lives much easier. So we've got like a lot of coding and bits of, you know, we've got this thing called Guyware. This guy called Guy did a load of coding for us to make systems talk to each other back in the day, and then buggered off, and we're still stuck with this Guyware. It's a very weird and wonderful world. We've got bits on the cloud, bits not on the cloud. It's a bit all over the place, to be honest. Really, you just wish the whole thing would go up in flames and you could just start again. That's how I feel about it. But you know, like I say, you just pick your battles and go. I'm all for just going for the things that will make the biggest difference, not just in terms of volume and customer experience, but you know, that'll really link in with other things that we're doing. You've mentioned about the vulnerabilities thing. That's really interesting. We're doing a lot of work at the moment about it with early intervention, and you know, data is a problem, isn't it? Getting it, the whole GDPR thing's made it so much more difficult. We've got to have sharing agreements in place with people that we've shared data for years, and it's never been a problem. So I've kind of been a bit all over the place there, but that's the nature of our organisation. It is all over the place. You know, we're so, I feel like we're kind of in front in a lot of respects, but then other times I just think we're really behind. You know, one big aspiration of mine would be to have a single sign-on and a one customer account, rather than you go on our website and you've got accounts all over the place for various things. But just even getting that, you know, we can put man on the moon, but we can't get a single sign-on customer account in a local authority. It's so yeah, but you know, I keep trying.
Well, I think that,
go on, sorry, Glenn.
That's a big part of it, is continuing and persevering and challenging on a constant basis. I love the idea of kind of fishing where the fish are. If you've got someone who's interested and they've got a system or a platform that they are willing to say, let's be better, then go and do that. Because what you're doing is you're proving the concept, and you're showing other people that, you know what, if we can do this even on this small service and evolve this to the point where actually it's meeting end user goals and people are raving about it, then imagine what we could do if you opened up a bit of your time and money. I mean, the amount of, and also the one other thing that I've not really covered too much is I'm a big fan of coding in the open and open sourcing and those sort of things. And this goes back to those legacy applications. As soon as you start going the kind of buying off a new platform, you're spending an absolute fortune just to license it. When actually, if you, and probably only use about 40% of the functionality. So then you're buying another platform to meet another 20%, another platform. And before you know it, you're spending 6-7 figures on licensing fees when actually you only need a small bunch of each of them. Now, why don't we actually build that functionality? You know, share it, release it. Every bit of code we ever write is on GitHub somewhere. So if we've got a housing repairs service and you need to actually evolve that, use ours, improve it a bit, and then put those improvements back into the pot so other people can pick them up. Or paid for appointments or bookings and FOI requests. All of this functionality everybody needs to one degree or another. Let's build it, let's share it, put it out there. And as long as everyone's able to then not just take it and download it and have it forever, but contribute to constant evolution of that and improvement of it, my God, the amount of money we're going to save. And every penny we're saving can either eliminate some of the savings that needs to be made. Some of that can be pumped back into improving it, but every other penny goes back into service provision and service delivery. No one gets into local government to fill out spreadsheets. We're getting into it to do good for people. And the more money we can pump that way rather than into the pockets of big IoT, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. Although some of our staff do like spreadsheets, so there's a big cultural thing behind all of this. We can do a lot of technical wizardry, can't we? We can have all the ideas and the tenacity and the perseverance in the world, but you've got to bring people with you. And I think because I'm from customer services, people often see it as a customer services problem, and they're not from customer services, and therefore it doesn't apply to them. I think what we're doing is great, but it won't work in their world. So we're still having them, although, things have improved, you do still have those battles, unfortunately. But,
Yeah, I'm relatively militant about it. As far as I'm concerned, every single thing that everyone does should be about making residents' lives better. And if your job doesn't do that directly or indirectly, you shouldn't be working. That job shouldn't be there.
I totally agree.
What about you, Ellen?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh,
Excellent.
fab, great. Yeah, I would say, I don't know if anybody knows about Powys County Council, little authority in Wales. I would say we're definitely on the evolution side. And I was thinking about why we've ended up so far that way. I've worked in Powys for about six years now. I haven't got an IT background, but I was brought in to look at transformation programs, but they were ICT ones as opposed to digital. So probably for the past 7 years, we've had a really strong ICT strategy, which looked at infrastructure and looked at systems, which looked at the kind of legacy systems. We managed a system rationalization program, which looked at, we had over 200 systems, applications, and part of that was to reduce that as much as we could, to look at corporate hubs. So we've ended up with kind of 5 corporate hubs, and everything that we build or do hangs off those corporate hubs. So we haven't got lots of applications, platforms anywhere. It's looking at how we integrate. Part of that is also we manage the ICT kind of governance framework, which means that nobody in the local authority can buy any platform, any system, any piece of software, unless, first of all, it goes to that group. And what we do is make sure that we haven't already got something in place that we can build on, that we can't build it ourselves in-house. And the third and final option is, okay, if nothing else is out there, we do have to go out. That's definitely not what we want to do. And over the last couple of years, I think most of the stuff we've either put an API on and integrated with our core hubs, or we've built ourselves. And I think the success has been investment. And that's all I can see is that when I started, the culture was very much like, let's not build in-house, let's buy what's out there. Completely shifted then to no, let's build in-house. We've got a development team of 8. We've got a digital transformation program, which has probably got 20 plus staff. Significant investment from WAG, and we talk about the collaboration. Part of that investment we have from them is that we have to be open source. We have to share what we do, and we do. It's open code, it's out there, anyone can use it. And I think that's been the success, is to have a huge amount of funding behind to build the resource and to have a really strict governance process in place, so people still do. You find out that someone's bought a little system on their credit card and it's like hasn't come through, and it's okay, well why? Okay, but that is hardly, that's the small percentage now. And I did work across Powys County Council as well, because it was a joint ICT team, and they're in a very different situation than the kind of councils. They've got tons of national applications, plus they've got people buying them all over, and it feels as if how the council probably was about 10 years ago. So listening to Glen, you talk, I'm feeling quite confident that we have evolved. It's taken a lot of resource, a lot of strict framework about what can be bought and what can't be bought. And also most recently, probably in the last year and a half, we've developed the agile kind of methodology, which are these sprints. This is about operating, making those small changes, making those processes. We've automated 53 processes. We've got another 40 left. Sharp sprints, agile approach, which is almost kind of wrap around it, really.
That is immensely reassuring. By the way, I've popped myself on mute because next door's building an extension, so there may be building noises and stuff in the background. I apologise for that. But yeah, that is hugely reassuring that you're in that position. I'd love to talk to you about some of that a bit more in terms of the open code and the sharing and how. But you're right. It takes bravery.
Yeah.
It takes bravery at a political level as much as a senior officer level to say, you know what, we're not going to accept mediocrity. We're not going to accept the old way of doing things anymore, and to be really harsh about it, because in my experience, it is always easier to listen to a salesperson and when they make a promise about a platform and what it can do, and then just say, okay, well, that ticks a box, let's go for that, that's easiest, instead of thinking what do we need to do, and does this fit with our vision? You know, is their Lego block going to fit with our Lego block, or is theirs actually Duplo? And if it, no matter how good it is, if it doesn't fit, it won't happen. And that it takes quite brave organization to turn down otherwise well respected and accepted software and technology in order to do it be part of the greater good. So that's amazing.
But what I would say is the flip side of that is a lot of this investment is on the back of, okay, you've got to save, which is where people are more kind of willing to back when you've got programs of work which are going to save, and the savings are there. Of course, they're there when we're looking at process kind of mapping, end to end, front end, back end. They're always there, but they're harder to get off the service areas once you've done the work, and that's our kind of challenge at the moment. And I think the other fundamental change was the structure of the organization change. So suddenly customer services, IT, digital all come under one person as opposed to being separate. So that whole structure and culture suddenly changed, which helped as well.
Yeah, clarity of voice, clarity of vision. It makes a difference. But you're right about the savings. And I know this is being recorded, so I shan't make too many absolute promises. But one thing we've considered exploring at Maytech is whether we could find an organisation who would be willing to kind of work with us, partner us up with us on an entire platform that they've got that will cost, that let's say, for example, theoretically a platform will cost £2 million of licensing cost a year. That's not obscene by any stretch of the imagination. There's platforms that cost a lot more than that. Now we go into them, we take that on with them, we run that, but basically phase that out and redevelop stuff for free. And so we're kind of the money that they would have invested in that over a period of time actually gets kind of shifted over to be invested in the creation of the same functionality, but open source, open code. So then at the end of it, switch off that license, bank that savings from the license fee from then onwards, and you've still got the functionality. That for me is quite exciting, because then again, that frees people up. And then just a fraction of the money that was spent licensing a static product could then be spent on bringing in your own in-house developers and evolving that on a constant basis based on user need and user feedback. That's something that I would see as quite an exciting opportunity.
Christopher, thank you for persevering.
Yeah.
In and out of the front door, and you're in now, and we can see you and hear you.
Yeah, terribly sorry for that delay. I've been trying to log on, and it just came with unstable internet. I don't quite know what went wrong, but in the end, I've got in. So yeah, so thanks very much. So I was just listening to the previous one, and I just noticed the colleague from Warwickshire has just had to leave another group, presumably. But he found the discussion so far interesting, so I'll catch up with him to catch up with what I've missed. The particular bit that I'm interested in is we're trying to improve digital access to our services. So my particular role is through the library service, we're trying to improve digital access amongst people who haven't got access to potentially either the skills, the equipment, or the internet connection to get online in society in general, and for our services at Warwickshire County Council in particular. So if there's anyone can contribute to that, that's what we're trying to do.
I mean, I'll let other people chip in as well, but one of the kind of underlying assumptions that I always challenge is digital skills. People shouldn't need skills to use a digital tool. If you need training on something, it's too complicated. And what it means is, at some point in the past, not enough effort was made to focus on user research, user design, content design, so that actually it becomes, this is, as long as you know where to go, actually it should be straightforward. Things like renewing a passport or applying for a provisional, actually census is a perfect example of, in the past, you needed skill in terms of understanding how to fill out one of those multiple pages of forms. This year, I was a bit nervous because I thought, oh, I've got to book out like half a day of my time to fill out the census. It took about 5 or 10 minutes, couple of clicks, and that was it. There was no skills needed. It was all just so slick. And for me, that's an example of user-centered design, user-based research that's actually developed something where, it doesn't matter whether I have digital skills or I didn't. Actually, it was so easy to use that as long as I knew where to go, it would be fine. So I think actually the connectivity is a massive challenge, how people get online and where the availability is for these things. But what we're building and what we're doing should never need skills to navigate. And if you do need skills, then something's going a bit wrong.
Yeah, that's a helpful point. Yeah, I guess from our point, the bit I'm doing is about people who just haven't got the technology, can't afford the technology, can't afford the internet connectivity, and may have missed out either because they're perhaps the wrong generation, which is what statistics are saying, is even though there is more active internet usage and ICT uses, growing numbers above the age of 75, say, there's still sort of a significant proportion of people who just don't seem to have access to it, and we're trying to reach them. And I guess that's what I'm been tasked with trying to do.
Just a quick question.
Sorry.
No, you go
I was just going to say, I know in Powys, we've just set up a program. So the library service I think they've just finished their digital strategy, but they've set up a program that we actually loan laptops like books, because we found that the technology wasn't there. They just didn't have the kit. We're rural, they didn't have the internet. So, we've got a process in place where people can come into the library and take a laptop away with them, like a book. Alongside that, they've got the access to the technology. We also offer training so they can come in and can sign up to skills. Taking on your point, I do kind of agree with that. But there was a digital strategy that was created around kind of libraries for that kind of reason, and we've only just reopened again, so I'm not quite sure how successful that would be. But even in terms of, we're offering wireless printing as well, so I can be in my home and I can print something off and it will print off in a library, and I can go in and pick it up. So again, it's another program of work around that we just kind of kicked off.
And that's in your authority, Powys, is it, Ellen?
It is, yes. Yeah.
After this meeting, send me a link or a
yes,
name of
certainly.
someone in Powys, just to make sure, because that's the similar sort of thing that we're trying to set up.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Would I have access to your email? Will this be shared? Yeah.
I can share. Well, Christopher, do you give me the power of authority to share your email address with Ellen?
I do indeed. That'd be great.
Excellent. Excellent. I will facilitate that. Just to make sure. Tony, have you done anything around that sort of digital inclusion as the customer access manager? Sorry, am I putting you under?
No, we were doing some really good stuff particularly when we had the face-to-face operation up and running, because we had quite a big space there, and we were working with CAB on various projects. Some of those have unfortunately had to come to a halt, so we're picking things up. we've currently got doing some work with the library. We've got like a tablet learning scheme, and we're looking at spaces there where we can support people. Working again with the DWP to support people with the digital side of applying for UC and things like that. So we do have somebody who works in the digital team that's responsible for digital inclusion, and I'm just one of the stakeholders of that group, doing my bit where I can, really.
I think London Borough of Croydon got some money off MHCLG to do some stuff around digital inclusion. Christopher, I'll search it out. And I know that we've done a couple of digital inclusion sessions. I'm just trying to find them on my website with, oh God, it's not a Good Foundation. It's what they're called now. They've changed their name.
Yeah, Good Foundation.
Yeah,
it's called Good Foundation.
Is it still called the Good Foundation? Yeah, so we've done some stuff with them around what they've done over the last sort of 18 months, especially around delivering digital inclusion, I guess, remotely, which has been another challenge. Because 9 times out of 10 people would come to you and, you know, would sit down with someone and would, you know, be shown how to use something, or, you know, fill in a form and that sort of thing. But yeah, I will not only give Ellen your email address, but if I find anything, I'll ping you some links through of content that other people have looked at.
Thanks for bearing me with that little. Sorry, Glenn, it might have gone off what you were actually talking about, but it's what I was come on to sort of try and find out about. So thanks ever so much for letting me just make those couple of links there, Nick and Glenn. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Excellent. So Glenn, are you going to share a little bit about the MAID, your backronym? I've never even heard of a backronym until so I'm always learning when I come into contact with you. Does it have to be done in sequence, or can you jump from one letter to another? How does it work?
No, they actually kind of work in conjunction.
All right.
The more you do things at the same time, the better. So if we were doing something, for example, on modernising some legacy tech, for me, I would feel a bit of a failure if we weren't at the same time helping to enable that organisation to take on board some stuff themselves.
Right.
I don't want to build dependency on Maytech, because that's the old business model. That's the old way of doing things. If we can empower an organisation to take ownership of their own destiny in terms of digital, then actually that frees us up to either work with some of those teams and services who need a lot more niche support, or even just start working at that more high end, start working at the AIs and the RPAs and the machine learning side of things, and start doing really interesting stuff with the data that we unlock. But that's only possible if that organization is in a position to do things itself. Now, sometimes that involves actually upskilling, helping to set up teams and services and train up people on how to do engineering, how to what agile actually is, and how to embed that at an operational, and let's be honest, at a strategic level as well, because there's a real different idea of what things like agile means at various different tiers of an organization. And whereas at one tier it might mean, you know what, we sometimes don't require you to do a Gantt chart as well as a project plan. That's not agile. And so it is about making sure that from top down in an organization, they understand actually this is what we're trying to achieve. And there's going to be challenges. In any agile environment, there's going to be times when we go down a route and think, actually, this isn't right. We've gone down the discovery process and we've hit the alpha and we've tested our hypothesis and it didn't work. Now, the best thing to do then is not to say, you know what, we're committed now, let's just finish off the project anyway. The best thing to do is to say, excellent, we've learned that, let's share the learning and stop doing that now. In the old days, it would be, well, let's just power through. We've said we're going to achieve this and we're going to deliver this, therefore we're going to deliver it by hell or high water. That's not right. So it is about skilling up an entire organization in so many different ways.
What about, just quick, and sorry if if anyone else wants to ask questions, please unmute. But what about, what are the sort of characteristics of an organisation which is, you know, the conditions are ideal for digital evolution to happen? You
Yeah.
know, what does it look like?
Yeah, for me, there's I love a quadrant, as I know so many people do. So you've got a quadrant of kind of digitally ambitious versus digitally mature. I actually don't mind too much where you are on the maturity index. To be honest, if you're really immature at the moment or somewhere around the middle, that's brilliant, because there's still immense gains that we can support you to make. It's more about the ambition. And even if you're not there yet, actually knowing we want to be better than this, we do want to improve. We can always be happy with where we are, but we're not satisfied. We want to be better no matter how good we are. Those organizations are the ones where we're going to be able to do the most good, because we can help people build business cases. We can help link up with other people who are doing amazing things and help to unlock some funding that actually can help. We've got partnership arrangements with AWS and Azure and some of the big hyperscalers, where we can maybe unlock some of their funding as well to support organizations that want to go down an ambitious digital evolution route but don't know where to start, or they've done some good things in one area but actually it's maybe not translating to other areas. They're finding tricky challenges. That's kind of where we come in. And it also helps, and it sounds awful, but back in my day anyway, people very rarely carried the same weight from internal as opposed to external. We'd have consultants come in, we would tell them what to say, they would say it, put their logo on it, and all of a sudden it carried more weight. I don't know why that's the case, but it always was the case. And sometimes having that external voice to validate and say, actually, this is right. Or to come in and say, look, I know you said you wanted to go in this direction. Actually, we think you can do even more good by going slightly differently. That reset option really helps to reinforce and to validate and to make sure that there is that degree of validation and external oversight on things from people who have, this is what they live and breathe. And it allows you to unlock a lot of potential and a lot of backing as well at a senior level to go down a certain route that you've wanted to go down for quite some time.
Any other questions, observations?
It's one of the reasons we've started. We've done it once or twice now, and I quite like it. We basically, I don't know if we'd be able to do this for absolutely everyone, but we basically offer a bunch of like free workshops where we go in and offer a few days, maybe even up to sort of, I think with Camden, we did a full week of consultancy, of like pre-discovery work to say, this is a project you want to do. Now, how can we give you all the evidence, all the groundwork, all the research and kind of recommendations? Because that's the only way you're going to build a business case in order to give you free the resources up to do something. Now we want to make it happen. We want places to evolve. So we've started offering a bit of that free work just to give back to some people. And sometimes it will be a case of, okay, thanks very much. We can't do anything. We just haven't got the resource or the support or the backing. But actually, sometimes it's the one thing that's going to get you over that hurdle to say, actually, you know what? Let's give it a go. Let's try it. Let's get some wins and prove the concept.
So you've just offered some free stuff, is that right?
To those who actually are serious about doing it.
Well, that's what I heard, that's free stuff. Ellen, you've unmuted.
Yeah, just to say, I totally agree with that. And I think it depends on the organization and the culture. But, at the very early days, it does definitely help to have somebody external come in and tell us what we need to do, no matter how many times you do it internally, whether it's a trust thing. I'm not sure why, but it does help, and it did kick our journey off in terms of bringing a few people in to kick off work, and it starts that ball kind of rolling then. So I would definitely agree. If there's free bits of work that you can do, it's always a good, but it will depend on the kind of organization and if they're okay to let people in or not. But if you can work with the people, and it's all about making it real for that organization, isn't it? So you guys bring in what you know, but having to link it to the local organization. But it definitely works.
So Glenn, what are the next steps, if there were any next steps? How do we digitally evolve? You've introduced us to the concept. and you've sort of, I guess, introduced the backronym. I'm going to keep using that word backronym, I think, for the rest of the week. It's something quite like the way it trips off the tongue, backronym. Yeah. So all right. So go on. So you've talked about digital evolution. You've talked about the backronym, the BABE backronym. I've got it on film that you've offered some free stuff.
Well, I think for me the next stage would be to go into a bit more detail on each of these. And so we've got the modernisation of legacy tech. We've got the how to work and deliver at pace through acceleration. We've got stuff around data and driving decision making through data, and then we've got stuff around enabling and upskilling. Actually going through each of those individually, running another one a bit like this on each of those. And I don't think everyone has to. It'd be wonderful if everyone dialed into all of them. But if there's one of those in particular where you're thinking, you know what, that resonates with me, that resonates with the challenges that I'm facing. So for example, you've got a load of legacy tech. Actually, I want to know a bit more about that. And we're thinking about building up some internal resource to do things, then you dial into the modernize one and the enable session. If actually data was, you know, that's the thing that's going to get me going the most. And the next step for us, then dial into the data one. I think if people are willing to dial into one or more of those, it gives me a bit of reassurance that actually there is something real to go for, and it's a real proper project or potentially a project that we can help support. And so for those participants, I'd be more than happy to, like I say, open up that free consultancy resource and get a couple of our team to come in and work with you on whatever projects you decided actually this is where we can get the most value.
With those, and just with those things, would you be able to, I guess, if people were to join, could you be able to provide on that session a bit more sort of tailored information? So if people to share, let's say the data one, let's say people were to share with you, you know, these at the moment we are currently encountering this particular issue with our, you know, what we do with our data strategy, the retention or usage, or, you know, we're looking at how do we make, you know, informed decisions, you know, using the data that we collect, you know, how do we visualize it and create reports for, you know, senior management to make quick strategic decisions. Is that could we make it that sort of, would it be generic, or could we potentially tailor it a little bit?
Yeah, if people were to sign up and kind of give you a bit of a steer in advance, then I could certainly tailor something.
Right,
I could give you like an overview of what we're talking about when we're talking about data, and then potentially as well, using that as an example, take some of the work we're doing elsewhere with MHCLG, with Hackney, with some real life examples to say, okay, this is what it looks like, and this is how we're pulling data out. The more information I've got in advance, the better, because what I wouldn't want to do is get one of our engineers in and basically go through a real detailed techie kind of infrastructure-y type discussion, when actually what we want to be talking about is policy, or vice versa. So an idea of who would be turning up and some of the key challenges would just help me to make sure that I'm speaking the right level of language.
Okay. Would people be interested in further activities?